In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the engines in Dredge and seeing how much of a difference they actually make in how fast you get through your playthrough. So we're going to see if those engine upgrades are actually worth it. And since we're doing science, we are going to be taking this guy along. If you know, you know. If you don't want to see us science through this, you can go to the time on the screen right now for the results. Since we start the game with the peculiar engine, that's going to be the first one we test out. It has plus 15.8 knots worth of speed, and since that doesn't really mean anything to me in the grand scheme of things, we're going to test this out by going back and forth between the docks at the Maros. And we're going to do this with just one engine installed. When we get around the docks, you're going to notice the video cuts. I did this intentionally. Unfortunately, I was not very consistent with how long it took me to dock and how long it took me to undock. This was the easiest way to remove some of that extra waiting time and also make the results a little bit more consistent. There will still be some inconsistencies due to the pathing not being perfect, but those should be small enough to not be too big of an issue. And the next engine up after this one is the rusty Outboard engine. It has a speed of 11.3 knots. This one is the first one that you can buy, just kind of for some context on there. I also want to talk about how I got the idea for this video. I was doing my cheapskate challenge runs and I completed both of them in about 3 hours and 45 minutes, give or take just a little bit. And I wanted to know how fast I could beat the game without any glitches or cheats or anything like that. So I did it just for fun, without the purchase restrictions, and I managed to get the time down to about 2 hours and 16 minutes. And I was a little bit curious about how much of that time got shaved off just because I had some of the engine upgrades that I didn't have before. So now here we are testing out how much of a difference these really make. We are going to test a little bit later in the video how big of a difference it can make going over a longer distance. We are only going to do 3 of those longer distance runs just because this is already going to be a pretty long video with us just testing out engines. So yeah, I didn't want to waste everybody's time, but I still wanted to show and to know how big of a difference it does make. The next engine that we have on our list is the improved Outboard engine with a speed of 16.9 knots. I also want to point out that this is a fully upgraded boat, and I read all of the books in the game, including the ones that would boost our engine speeds a little bit. So this won't be accurate for earlier game or for gameplay where you're not reading the books. This was the boat from my save file that I did my crowd control streams with, so that's also why our boat is orange and green. My Twitch chat chose the colors for that, and I left it all alone. But yeah, if you're earlier on in the game, this will not be quite accurate. The next engine is the refined Outboard engine with a speed of 28.1 knots. And I do want to point out, if you have the Iron Rig DLC, you can get some other parts to further boost your engines. For the purpose of this video, I'm not going to do that. I emptied out the entire boat except for our fishy friend and the engine just to make sure there weren't any of those bonuses. I can't remove the ones from the books, unfortunately. I also do want to say I would have removed our fishy friend, but I didn't have room in storage. So yeah, he stays. I also found out that he doesn't rot. That was also from the Iron Rig DLC. I don't want to give anything away for people that haven't played through that one, so that's why I'm being vague about that, but The next engine that I picked was the twin prop engine. It has a speed of 39.4 knots. This is where I really started to notice a big difference in how fast the engines were. I didn't have the timer on the screen while I was doing this to avoid distracting myself, but I could tell even without looking at the time that we had significantly improved our speed. Up next is the jet drive engine with a speed of 10.1 knots. This one I already knew was going to be slower than our last engine. It's a smaller engine, so then you can squeeze it into tighter spaces and put more of them on the boat and then add more speed by having more engines. This one's not really designed to be a standalone engine, but it is still faster than having no functioning engine on the boat at all. If you want to see what happens if you damage all of your engines, there is a video clip of it in my Cheapskate Challenge Attempt 1 video. You can still move, but it's really, really slow. I did not test that speed out in this video. It just seemed like it was going to be even more effort for an even longer video when I already have a video clip out there to show how slow it is. It is painfully slow. So yeah, that's the whole reason I didn't want to do that for this one, is it is that slow. You can get around like that. I don't think you really want to, but you can. Our next engine is the twin jet drive engine with a speed of 56.3 knots. Unlike the other jet drive engine, this one does add a significant amount of speed on its own. It also does take up a lot more cargo space though. So if you're low on cargo space, this is probably not the best engine to use, but it is a pretty fast one. Most of these runs I did during the day, just because I didn't want to risk getting attacked by one of the monsters and having to redo the test over again. This one we went quick enough, it didn't matter. And up next, we're going to look at the engine stack. This one has a speed of 72 knots, and this makes it the fastest single engine in the game. You can add more speed to it by stacking engines, and we do look at an example of this later in the video as well. As you can see, this one significantly is faster than our first engine. We are also going to look at the Blackstone Key DLC Arterial Engine. It has a speed of 7.9 knots. I used this one in both of my Cheapskate Challenge runs. If you have the DLC at the start of the game, you can go get this engine right away and improve your movement speed without spending the money and the research parts to get another engine. As you can see, it's not great, but it is better when combined with the Peculiar Engine rather than just having one of these engines on their own. Much like the Peculiar Engine, you can only have one of these in your playthrough unless you're using cheats or glitches. So yeah, you only get one of these, and the nice thing about it is that it only takes up one tile space, so you can squeeze it into your boat without it taking up too much room. This is great, especially really early on when you don't have a lot of room on your boat to begin with. This boat has plenty of room, and that's not really a concern with that one. There are better engines to pick, but we're going to look at it anyway because we can, and we were going to compare the engines, so why not be thorough and look at this one too. After this one, we're going to go back and we're going to look at how much of a difference it makes to stack the engines and add more of them. This is where engines like this one become more relevant. Again, they're not great on their own, but they're small and they squeeze into some of the spaces that maybe the other engines don't fit nicely into. We're going to go back and we're going to get the engine stack and add as many of the jet drive engines as we can to see how much of a difference that makes. We do wind up with 4 of the jet drive engines on top of the engine stack, and that makes our total boat speed 123.8 knots. That does include the boat speed without any engines and the book bonuses. The engines alone should make up 112.4 knots of that total speed. Obviously, this one's the fastest, and so I'm not going to rank that in how great it is because it's multiple engines. On its own, the engine stack is the best, followed by the twin prop engine, the refined outboard engine, the improved outboard engine, the peculiar engine, the rusty outboard engine, and the jet drive engine, with the arterial engine being the slowest one in the game. Even though the peculiar engine is not the slowest engine in the game, it is the one that you start with. So we are going to test out how much some of those differences make over a long distance. We're going to start with the peculiar engine. We're also going to take a look at our engine stack and then our boat that had the engine stack and the 4 jet drive engines. If you want to just skip to the results, go to the time on the screen, not the pink one, the other one. We're going to go all the way out to Gale Cliffs and back for this test just to see how much time difference it makes for just one of these longer trips out to one of the other areas from the central point of the lighthouse. I was surprised to find that the rusty outboard engine was significantly worse than the peculiar engine. I didn't compare the knots of each engine before I did this, but I'd always assumed that the one you had to buy would be slightly better than the one you start with. I think the rusty outboard engine is intended to give you more speed by adding to the existing speed instead of being there to replace the peculiar engine. The next upgrade with the improved outboard engine was faster than the peculiar engine and would be the first one worth replacing the peculiar engine with. The arterial engine, again, I believe this one is there to do what the jet engine does. It's meant to fill in extra space and add more speed to other engines. It is slightly worse than the jet drive engine, and you can only get that one. But again, you don't have to spend any game money on it, just real world money. And speaking of DLCs, the Pale Reach also has an item that you can use to speed up travel time. In the video where I did my second attempt at the Cheapskate Challenge, we used the RS Anchor to cut down on travel time. This one only really works if you're intending to go back to a certain place multiple times, but it can shave off several minutes of time that you would have spent just driving back to that location where you dropped it off at. I did start getting a little bit nervous at this point while I was doing this test. I did not turn on the peaceful fishing mode, so getting attacked by the Leviathan was definitely a possibility. Going to Gale Cliffs left me in deep water for most of this test. At worst, I was gonna have to redo it, but I didn't really want to have to do that. I wasn't gonna pause to change the setting either though. Even if the Leviathan didn't sink the boat, getting hit by it would possibly have an impact on our time. If you're paying close attention to the days, you might notice that I actually did this test last out of these 3 last tests. And I want to note I did start out by going back towards Devil's Spine instead of the Morrow when leaving Gale Cliffs. That was an attempt to stick to the same path I did in each run. I was trying to turn when I got level with the rocks that marked my path back to the Morrows. I did this one last, and so that meant that I made it to Gale Cliffs and back very quickly for the other 2 runs, so this seemed to take forever doing it that way. It is still very, very slow and noticeably slow. I don't recommend taking engines off the boat if this is something that would bother you, but yeah, it wasn't as bad when I was used to just using the peculiar engine and the arterial engine in both of my Cheapskate Challenge runs, but going from a very fast boat to a boat that is not very fast makes these trips seem to take forever. We aren't even back to Blackstone Isle yet. We can kind of see it. We're starting to drive past it, but we still got quite a ways before we get back to the Morrows. Yeah. I don't know. It seems like it took longer than it actually did. And when I say that, I mean that I thought this was gonna add 10 minutes to the video, just this one. And it didn't. Obviously it didn't. We are almost back to the dock and we're still under 5 minutes, but it felt like 10 to 15 minutes. It wasn't. That was just kind of the illusion of going really, really fast and then suddenly going really, really slow. So yeah, if you're gonna do this, work your way up to the faster boat, not backwards. That could be a challenge in and of itself, going from a faster boat to a slower one. And then here is going to be our final time for this one, right there. Now we're gonna go back to the engine stack. This is just the engine stack. We'll look at the engine stack plus the 4 jet drive engines next, but you can already see how much faster we are going through this. It is so much nicer, and this isn't even as fast as the boat can go. With crowd control, you can actually go faster. And I will say that there is such a thing as going too fast in this game. I kept crashing into things because I was just going so fast. I would also pass things that I was trying to get to. That whale scared me a little bit because I thought it was the Leviathan for a second. It was not. We were fine. I didn't run into the Leviathan except for when I was doing B-roll stuff. When I was doing the B-roll stuff, I went and I just drove as fast as I could off the edge of the map, and I've never done that before. I didn't get a great video out of it, so it like came up behind the boat and like all you could see was like the back of its head. So I cut it, but it does warn you, you will not accidentally go off the map and get eaten by the Leviathan if you're worried about that. It tells you that you are in uncharted waters and you need to turn around. It did take me a very long time to get out to the uncharted waters as well. I drove with nothing for the longest time before it finally gave me the "you are entering uncharted waters" message. You have to go a really, really long ways out into the middle of nothing before you wind up getting eaten by the Leviathan. And that was something else that I learned while I was doing this. And here is our final time for the engine stack, right here. And now we're gonna do our last one, which is the engine stack plus the 4 jet drive engines. As you can see, we are going faster than just the engine stack alone. It's not as big of a jump as it was from the peculiar engine to the engine stack, but it is still noticeably faster. And I will compare all of these times so you can see them side by side and see how big of a difference it does make. But we're not even a minute in and we're already basically to Gale Cliffs. Our first one with the peculiar engine took us almost 5 whole minutes. So as you can see, it's a pretty big change. I definitely felt the change. This is the one that I did first. If you were paying attention to the dates, you might have noticed that. I think that's why the other one felt so slow, is because it was such a big change going from this to going super, super slow. And right here is our final time. And for our final results, we shaved off almost exactly 3 minutes just going from the peculiar engine to the engine stack. Over the course of the game and traveling back and forth to the different locations, this could really add up significantly over time, and those engine upgrades could be really worth the effort if you're trying to go faster or you hate travel time. If you like taking things slow, maybe they aren't really worth it to you. Thanks for watching.